This next topic is about flowal and cryptology. We're going to start by learning about flowcharts. So in today's lesson, we're going to understand what flowcharts can be used for. We're going to understand about the different symbols that are used in flowcharts, and we're going to learn how we can draw flowcharts using the correct symbols. So just a recap of the key task. Recognise the name and range of symbols used in flowcharts, be able to read flowcharts, and we're going to then look to extend your knowledge of flowcharts and how to use them, including weights or delays. So looking at the information we have for your knowledge organiser, there's a lot of information in here that you need to pick up and learn over the next few weeks. One of the key bits today is an algorithm. So an algorithm is a list of step-by-step instructions that when followed will solve a problem. We're also going to learn about flowcharts, and I've mentioned it a few times, the word flowchart, so we need to understand what that is. There's a picture here of a flowchart, and we'll move on to this later. So these shapes here, what they all mean. But a flowchart is a way of showing all the steps in an algorithm or problem visually in a diagram. And we'll learn about some of these other words like terminator and decision box in today's lesson. So let's move on with what we need to have a look at. So you've got a few questions that you need to answer, and you can write these in your e-portfolio. So I'm going to show you some information in a moment, but you'll need to answer what is an algorithm, what is a flowchart, and then the third question is how do you know where a flowchart begins? So these are the three questions that you're going to need to answer shortly. So we'll come back to these in a minute. So the first thing is, what is an algorithm? And it's already in your knowledge organiser, but I'm going to repeat it here. An algorithm is a list of step-by-step instructions that when followed will solve a problem. So it's like a task list of things to do that if you complete them, you will solve the problem that you've got to complete. So it's a little bit like some instructions, step-by-step instructions, one after another. So it could be instructions like building a Lego model. You've got a set of step-by-step instructions that you have to follow in order to be able to complete the task. So that is what an algorithm is. It's a step-by-step series of instructions to solve a problem. Here is an algorithm which is written as a task list of things that you do in the morning when you get out of bed. So your alarm might ring. So the first thing you have to do is switch your alarm off. Then you need to get out of bed. Then you need to go and get showered. After you've had a shower, you need to get dried. And then after that, you get dressed. Then you might have your breakfast. Then you might brush your teeth. And then you might go to school. So these are all in order. There's no point getting dressed and then getting showered. So it has to be done in the correct order for the task to be completed. So that is what an algorithm is. And this has been written task by task, one after another, step-by-step series of instructions. So one way to show an algorithm is the use of a flowchart. Now this is a flowchart from the Big Bang Theory, when Dr. Sheldon Cooper tries to make friends with people, and this is the procedure he follows in order to make a friend. This one looks a little bit complex, and it is quite complex. There's a lot going on in here, so we're just going to simplify things a little bit and go to a more basic flowchart, which is here. So we've got an algorithm, a list of step-by-step instructions that when followed will solve a problem, and here we have what we have when we get out of bed. Now I've drawn this as a flowchart. So we start, and then we switch the alarm off, then we get out of bed, then we shower, then get dried, then get dressed, then have breakfast, then brush teeth. I've changed my algorithm slightly because I've added in this bit here, which is a question: is it a school day? With a yes and no. If it is a school day, we go to school. If it's not, then we can play for the day. So this flowchart here is a visual representation of our algorithm that we had earlier. And I'm just going to build this up. So if we start with a blank screen, let's look at this. So the first thing we need to do is start our algorithm. So with a flowchart, we can start with a start, and it's this oblong shape here. This is a start, sometimes known as a terminal. So we've got a start. Then what we have is a few instructions of what we do. Switch alarm off, get out of bed, shower, get dried, get dressed, have breakfast, brush teeth. This is the same as we've got in our task list here. Now in a flowchart, each part is connected by an arrow. This arrow here shows the direction of flow. It shows that one instruction then goes to the next, then to the next, then to the next. So these arrows are really important to show the direction of flow in a flowchart. After the arrows, we then have this question here. This is a decision box. So is it a school day? Now decision boxes are in these diamonds. Is it a school day? And a decision will have two possible answers. So it's got a Boolean answer. It's one or the other. So it could be on or off, yes or no. Just like we've got here, is it a school day? So it's going to be a yes or no. So we've got two answers here, a yes and a no. So there are two possible answers leading from a decision box. A yes or no. From there, we can then add in our other processes here. So we can either go and play or we go to school. So that's as we'd expect it to be. We can see that our decision box here branches off. Now flow diagram generally goes down or moves to the right when we draw a flow diagram to keep it nice and neat. So we've got our Boolean decision, one or the other, yes or no. And eventually, if we go to school, then we can end our flow chart, and we end with another terminal, and here it is in the oblong shape with end, or the oval shape here. So what we're missing now is from our no choice, and we go and play. This just now needs to end up with the arrows, and you'll see here that the arrow goes back into another arrow just to then carry on the direction of flow. So that is what a flow chart is. So you should be able to answer now, and you can pause the video to answer what is an algorithm, what is a flow chart, and how do you know where a flow chart begins. So pause the video and answer those questions. Hopefully these are the answers you've got. So an algorithm is a list of step-by-step instructions that when followed will solve a problem. A flowchart is a visual way of showing that information in an algorithm. So a way of showing all the steps in an algorithm or problem visually in a diagram. And how do we know where a flowchart begins? It starts with the start symbol. So why would we use flowcharts? And flowcharts are really handy if we want to break a problem down into smaller steps. They can show how many different processes there are, how many different steps there are to complete a problem. And it's a way of visualizing the data flow through a process, the step-by-step instructions, so you can visually see what needs to be completed. And it's another way of communicating ideas to someone else. So a flow diagram or a flow chart should be so easy to follow that you can give your flow chart to somebody else and they'll be able to follow the instructions, complete the problem. So let's have a recap of the different shapes. We've got our terminators, which are our start and our end, and these are in the ovals. Any process, any task that needs to be done is in a rectangle. And the next shape we've not mentioned or not seen in our flowcharts yet, but it's an input or output. So this shape here for an input or output, and this could be something like where you have to input on a keyboard or you have to press a button or something along those lines. An output would be a display on the computer screen or a buzzer or something that happens like a motor moving. So inputs and outputs are shown here. With a decision is like a question, and that's always in a diamond shape. And from a decision, there are two possible outputs, which are Boolean operated, so it's one or the other. So it's yes or no, or on or off. And then the other key bit that's important in a flowchart is the direction of flow, the arrows showing you where you're moving from one process to the next, or next part of the flowchart. So it's really important that you understand these different shapes and you can draw these shapes in your ePortfolio. Now, PowerPoint and Word's really good for drawing flowchart shapes. So all you need to do is click on the insert and then choose a shape, and all the flowchart shapes that you're going to need are here in this flowchart section. So you've got the rectangles, you've got the diamonds, you've got your ovals, all the information's here that you could possibly need, and you've also got your arrows here in your lines. So if you want to draw the decision, the diamond, you can just draw the shape, and a decision, a diamond, will have a question in it, so you can just right click and edit text, and you can write your question in the box there, so what it is, and then you can just draw your yes and no to complete that decision. So very easy to draw the shapes in PowerPoint or in Word. Okay, you've got a few questions that you now need to answer in your ePortfolio. So what name is given to the start and end symbols in a flowchart? And if you need to go back over the video, you can to see that information. What do the lines do in a flowchart? What name is given to the diamond shape? And can you give an example of an input and an example of an output? So again, that information is all in the video. If you need to re-watch it, go back and re-watch it. All that information's there, and you can pause the video while you answer those questions. So I'm hoping these are the answers you've got. You've got Terminator for the start and end symbols. The lines show the direction that the processes take. The diamond shape is a decision box. An example of an input is text or a button that you might press. And an output is a buzzer or a light or a motor, something along those lines. So let's look at reading a flowchart. I've got a flowchart here, and we start, and it's can you see a zombie? If you can see a zombie, you can then ask a question, has the zombie seen you? If the zombie has seen you, then you can run very fast. And then you can look at the next question, have you run far enough? And if you haven't run far enough, it loops back round here. Think back to words we've used before, iterate. So it iterates round. Have you run very fast? Have you run far enough? It's still no. It still iterates through. Let's just go back a stage. And this can keep going back in a loop here. If you have run far enough, it's a yes. And then you follow the direction of flow. Have you found somewhere to hide? If it's yes, then you can end the process. So what you need to do in your ePortfolio is write down all the text contained in decision boxes. So which are the decision boxes? What does it say in them? And what does it say in the process boxes? So pause the video and answer those questions. Okay, now on to writing our next task. You're now going to create your own flowchart, and in your ePortfolio you're going to write down the steps to make a cup of tea. So the step-by-step process, the algorithm for making a cup of tea, and all those important decisions need to be in there. Decisions such as, do you want milk or do you want sugar? And then what you then need to do is turn your set of instructions into a flowchart using the correct shapes, correct symbols, using the toolbar to show that, to see if you can create a flowchart for making a cup of tea. Again, you can pause the video while you complete that. Now we're going to look to develop your flowchart just a little bit further, and I've got a new symbol in here. This shape here is a delay or a wait. So it pauses the program for however long you tell it to pause. So here we've got wait 2 seconds. This is really handy when we're writing an algorithm for something like traffic lights, where we have a wait in our program. And in your ePortfolio, you will find a set of instructions for traffic lights, which will look like this. So start, green traffic light is on. So the red man is lit. Then you press the button, which is an input. Wait 30 seconds. Then the green light goes off, the amber light turns on. You wait for another 2 seconds. The amber light turns off and the red light turns on. You wait for another 2 seconds and the red man turns off and the green man turns on. Then wait for 30 seconds and that process then ends. So you need to try and draw the flowchart for these traffic lights in your ePortfolio. If you want to pause the video while you complete that. Hopefully you've got an answer similar to this on the left. Here we can see the flow diagram going down with the arrows. On the right hand side here, what we've got is exactly the same, just zoomed in. And we can see the direction of flow just moves up and back to the top here, so it fits on a page so you can see it on this screen. So it's exactly the same as what's on the left, just enlarged so we can actually see what's going on here. So hopefully you've got something very similar to that. So to finish off today, what you need to do is write an algorithm to calculate the 5 times table. Once you've created your algorithm, the step-by-step process, you can then create a flowchart to show how you can solve the 5 times table for any number. And then that would be really good if you can complete that.